So in this video, we're going to be talking about tattoos. Are they prohibited or are they allowed? Should Christians be having tattoos or not? And I'm going to be sharing my views. Hopefully it will be of help to you, but you want to hear what I have to say. So stay tuned on this channel. I'll be back. But before then, I have a confession to make, and don't judge me on the basis of this. I'm going to show you something and we'll talk about it in the video. No, I'm just kidding. I know some of you have already started to judge me. Just stay put and watch the video. We'll talk about it in a minute. See you soon. Now on this channel, I share with you faith-rooted ideas, wisdom, principles, and information that would help you through the labyrinth of life. I also aim to bring as much clarity as possible on complicated issues that affect us as Christians in the world today. Now, when it comes to a controversial topic like this, there are usually people on two opposing sides. People who are for tattoos, who feel like their tattoos should be allowed or allowed, people can have them, or people who think that tattoos are not allowed, that is prohibited, and so on. Now, irrespective of which of the sides you are on, I would like to hear your thoughts. Do you think that tattoos, or Christians should get tattoos if they want to? I'd like to hear your thoughts, so make sure you leave your thoughts in the comment section of this video. Now, for clarity, I'm not a person with ink. I don't have ink on my body. I've never had ink on my body. I don't have a piercing. I don't have earrings, but we're not talking about piercings today. We're talking more about tattoos, but I don't have one. So anything I'll be sharing today in my views and what I've understood from scripture, and you're within your own rights to do your research and sort of whether align with what I'm saying or not, it wouldn't really matter. I'm just going to be sharing with you my own point of view. Now, when this topic is mentioned, most of the time what you would hear people quote is the book of Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 28. Now it says, "Ye shall not make any cuttings on your flesh for the dead, nor have any tattoo marks on your body." Now, naturally, that is the scripture you will find somebody is going to quote to you or is going to share with you when it comes to this particular topic on tattoos. But I'm going to share with you two other scriptures, and I'm going to come back to this scripture and we're going to try and look at them as a whole. Under normal circumstances, anybody who is talking about tattoos, especially if they're on the side of not having tattoos, will bring this scripture up. And so I'm going to share two other scriptures, and then we're going to look through each of them and we're going to try and live from a holistic perspective. So I'm going to read Isaiah 44 and verse 5. It says, "Some will say, I belong to the Lord. Others will call themselves by the name of Jacob. Still others will write on their hand, the Lord, and will take the name Israel." Okay, so just put that at the back of your mind. Obviously, that writing on their hand means it's a tattoo. So, but again, let's read one more scripture and then I'll come back to the first scripture, second scripture, and then we'll look at a few things. Okay, now the third scripture is found in Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 16, and it says that I have engraved you in the palm of my hands. Now it says clearly there that engraved. So again, that would make us believe that's a tattoo. And who was speaking here? It was God. And God was saying that I've engraved you in the palm of my hands. So it sounds like a tattoo in God's palm, and he has engraved you in his palm. Anyway, let's go back to the first scripture and let's begin to look at context here. Now, going back to Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 28, if we go 2 verses backward, it talks about not having or eating any meat with blood in it. So it means if we've had a burger or if we've had a steak, somehow we've actually done the wrong thing if we're looking at it from that context. And if you look at verse 27, the verse before the one with tattoos, it talks about not cutting the hair on the side of your face, and it also talks about not cutting your beard. And that would mean that I am currently, because obviously I have cut my hair, it means that I would have done the wrong thing. But we do that a lot of times, whether it's pastors or whether it's men of God or ministers. We cut our beard, we cut the side of our faces. So why would we say 27 doesn't apply, but then 28 applies to us? And that is what I want to discuss here, because this is about context. Now, the children of Israel, when they left Egypt, there was a practice in Egypt at the time that the gods that the Egyptians were serving were usually engraved on their skin. Now, that was a common practice at the time they were in Egypt, and by the time they left Egypt, God was trying to tell them that they should not have any of those practices. So whatever it was, they should not tattoo the dead on their flesh, as was the custom in Egypt, where they had spent a number of years as slaves. Now we see in the second scripture in Isaiah chapter 44, and it says there that some would write on their hands the Lord's. And it doesn't sound like, there was an issue with that. Now, if we look at Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 16, he also talks about God having a tattoo of you in the palm of his hands. Now, obviously, that is anthropomorphic, and what that means is that, doesn't necessarily mean God has hands. What they're trying to depict there is the intimacy between yourself and God using human characteristics, something that will make you understand how intimate you are with God. Doesn't necessarily mean when you see God, you're going to start looking for yourself on the palm of his hands. However, it's trying to say, look, God is quite intimate with you and he cares a lot about you. And that's what that scripture is saying. Again, context is very important. Now, none of these is saying you should get a tattoo or you shouldn't get a tattoo, because you could argue with Isaiah 44 the same way you could argue with Leviticus chapter 19. However, each of them you could be reading them out of context. So here are my tips when it comes to tattoos. The first one is, why are you getting a tattoo? You need to sit down and think to yourself, what is the motive behind me getting this tattoo? Again, when we look at Leviticus, it talks about people engraving the pictures of dead people on their bodies, and that was an act of worship, and that was clearly frowned upon. Why are you getting the tattoo? If you wanted to get a tattoo, you wanted to ink your body, what's the purpose? Are you trying to glorify God? Will they glorify God? What is your motive? You need to check your motive before you think of doing anything of that nature. And one thing that you need to think about is, many years from now, am I still going to want this tattoo on my body? Now, a lot of times you found people who tattoo their boyfriends or girlfriends on their bodies, and then many years after down the line they break up, and then they have to look for something else to replace that tattoo or that sort of thing. You need to ask and think deeply and ask yourself that many years from now, whatever tattoo you've gotten on yourself, are you going to want that? Even if it's a tattoo of a scripture, are you going to want that 20 years from now on your body? Would you, why not just read the scripture instead of trying to imprint it on your body? We know you love God, but look, if you might as well just read the scripture or put it in your room, or something. Do you really need to put it on your body? Will you 20 years from now regret having that particular scripture on your body? That's something you have to think about before you think about getting a tattoo. Now, the third thing you need to think about is, am I influencing people the wrong way with this tattoo? Because you might be, depending on the image you put there, people might interpret that wrongly, and they might also go and do the same thing, especially as if you're a person of influence. And also the location of the tattoo, because people obviously put tattoos in all parts of their bodies and all of that, and if you put the tattoo in certain positions, you might be drawing people into lust and into other things. So you need to think about whether or not that tattoo is going to negatively influence people or not. And then finally, are you judging people based on their outward appearances? Now, if you're just judging people because they have a tattoo, and I have many friends who have seen their tattoos, they've had tattoos, they probably were not even Christians when they got the tattoos, and now they're Christians, but they still have the tattoos because those tattoos are permanent. So are you judging people because you've seen a tattoo, then you're beginning to think in your mind, oh, they're of the devil, or they're satanic people, or whatever it is that you've been brought up to believe? Or Bible makes it very clear that we shouldn't judge people from their outward appearances. And so a lot of times you would find people who don't look like you do, they don't look like they're Christian, because we expect people to look in a certain way as Christians. But that is not up to you to decide. We should work with people, show them love, express love to them, and do what we're supposed to do as Christians, and not focus so much on their outward appearances. Yes, a lot of times the outward appearance is as a result of certain things going on, good or bad, on the inside. However, you could also see somebody in well suited, no tattoos, no piercings, nothing, who is an outright devil. So it works on both ways, on both sides. So never get carried away by people's looks or appearances. Focus more on who they are and how they interact and how they behave. Focus more on the interaction rather than trying to focus on how they look. There's a UFC fighter called John Bones Jones, and he is one of the greatest of all time when it comes to UFC. If you know UFC, you know who he is. If you don't, you can Google him. And he has the scripture Philippians chapter 4 on his body. And that is something that he has talked about a lot, about his religion. Now, obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that he practices, because he has been in trouble a lot. He has been involved with cocaine, but it doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't believe in God. His father is a pastor, I believe, and so he puts that out there, and because of that, a lot of people have googled what that means, and tried to, that's probably ministered to them in many ways. And so it might be a tattoo and people might frown at it, but again, it's passing on a positive message. So you could argue on both sides, but it's irrelevant when it comes to the inside. What is on your inside? Are you actually living a life that is worthy of emulation? Because whether somebody has an earring or a tattoo, what is going to take you or make you a good person or take you even to heaven is not about those looks. It's more about on the inside. But you have to also ensure and take responsibility of what you carry on the outside, because that is also either going to influence people negatively or positively. Now, I'm not going to sit on the fence on this one, okay? Except you've had a tattoo prior to becoming a Christian and knowing God, my advice will be not to have a tattoo, especially because you're going to be a person of influence in the kingdom. And as you continue to grow in influence, whether it's a minister, a pastor, some people are going to read those things the wrong way. Okay, some people are going to see the tattoo and they're just going to take it on face value, and they will go back and do something else because they've seen you do put a tattoo of a scripture. They might probably go and put a tattoo of something else that is not godly. And that was because you influenced them to do it unknowingly. So my position will be, if you don't have a tattoo, do you really need to ink your body? I would say if you did, I wouldn't say it's a sin, obviously depending on the motive, the reasons. Obviously if you're glorifying the dead like the scripture say in Leviticus, then that's a separate conversation. However, I wouldn't say it's a sin. However, I would say you don't need it. It's unnecessary. Just leave your body the way it is. Just serve God as a person who loves and cherishes God. But again, don't judge people who have tattoos. And if you don't have one and somebody has one, don't judge them. If you have one, don't feel you need to take it off because you need to prove that you're holy or that sort of thing. And that is where I stand when it comes to this particular topic. Hope that has been helpful to you. If you're new to this channel, make sure you click the like button and subscribe, because that will make YouTube know that you like the video and show it to other people. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Peace.